All right. Okay. Good morning or afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. We'll make a start. My name's David Ashton. I'm Principal Consultant of Corporate Supremacy and also a Business Station Advisor since 2014. So that's just a bit about me and what I do. So I provide advisory services, webinars, workshops on those subject matters. A little bit of information about Business Station. I will send you a copy of this document later on, so I'll just leave that with you, and also the ASBAS program. If you've got any questions as we go along, just put them in the chat box and I will respond to them, although I might be getting to your answer anyway, but feel free to open the chat box, and likewise at the end of the thing I'll leave the microphones open for about 5 minutes if people have got any other questions they want to ask. So let's make a start. So we just had someone else join us. So yeah, David Ashton's my name. That's my business and what I do. I've been a Business Station Advisor. So I'm going to send you a copy of this document later today. So this is what we're going to go through. We're going to talk about sort of health, safety, and environment quality management. These are international standard organisation management systems that you can have certified if you like, or just operate your business in accordance with these internationally recognised management approaches to how you run your business. Health and safety, we've got legislation that we've got to work to in terms of work health and safety. So you can set up management systems to help you do that and use these standards to help with that. Likewise with environmental management, how you interact with the environment. So that's what we're going to go through. Why you should have these sort of systems. And there's both a business management reason, there's a corporate social responsibility reason, there's also a business development reason as well. Then we're going to look at how big you should make these systems, and it's all depending on the size of your business. Plan, do, act, check. That's the process to managing and establishing your systems. We're going to look at the structure of your systems, in terms of the documentation that you need to prepare and how you should go about it, looking at the requirements of each of the standards. And then I'm going to look at the standards individually. So look at work health and safety, environmental management, and quality management, and then we'll finish off. And I've got some website links and that to help you as well, in terms of how you can further information to help you get started. So let's go from there. So what is a health, safety, environment, quality management system? Well, it comprises 3 business management approaches, and based on these international standards. So 45,000 is occupational health and safety management. So that's the way you identify health and safety hazards and control and manage risks from a health and safety point of view in the workplace. The standard uses occupational health and safety. In Australia, we use the term work health and safety now. Environmental management, well, that's how your business interacts with the natural environment and how you protect it. That's essentially, and then the process to do that, and also looking at, with both work health and safety and environmental management, identifying emergency situations and having procedures in place with those as well. And quality management is the processes that you put in place to deliver your product or service to the market and ensure that your customers or your clients are happy with that. So from the date that you get the order, from the date that you deliver the product or service, what are the processes that you're going to go through to ensure that you actually can deliver that, but also that your customer or client is actually happy with the service or the product that they've received. So why should we have a system? And it really depends on the size of the business. I mean, it could just be you and a couple of consultants. It could just be you, but depending on the size, you really should have some understanding of the processes that you do it. And really, as we go through each of the slides, you'll get an understanding of that. And when you start and look at your business, you'll think to yourself, well, I sort of do that in a way. You just don't think about it. You're just getting on with your day-to-day work. So this is getting you to think about how you actually run your business in the context of these international standards of management. So HSEQ systems, they establish a common documented management framework. So policies, procedures, work instructions, forms, templates to help you implement it. So, and a common language. So using particular terminology to define certain things. So identify and prioritize risks and opportunities. So it's very risk-based thinking, but also helping you identify opportunities for improvement in your business, but also market opportunities and the like. They're to set and monitor goals. So you should be setting business objectives across quality, safety, and environment. Achieve relevant environmental, social, and governance outcomes. So you're probably starting to hear this term now, ESG, environment, social, and governance. So that's a management framework and reporting framework around climate change concerns, corporate social responsibility, and the like. This sort of license to operate thing that people are talking about now. And we'll touch on that. Full compliance obligations. So fulfilling your compliance obligations, both in terms of your legislation that you have to comply with, but also any contracts that you might have with suppliers or employees or other entities. So it's looking at that as well. And a lot of the times, and I'm an auditor of these systems, and a lot of times I hear this thing, I've got to comply with this, or I've got to fill out the form, or all this sort of thing. This is a health, safety, environment, quality management system is how you do your business. It's not this thing that sits over here that you've got to comply with. If you operate in accordance with a HSEQ system consistent with the standards, compliance will be a natural one of the outcomes of that. Business development will be an outcome. Reduced safety risks and safety incidents will be an outcome by operating and running your business in accordance with these standards. So improved collaboration and communication across business functions, that's particularly important, making sure you're all using a common language and standard documentation. Shifting from command and control to one that depends on teamwork. So, if you've got a larger team, people are working together, they're operating off the same standards and procedures. Everyone knows where they stand and what they've got to do and what their job is. So, you as the manager is simply managing that team to deliver it, but they've got the framework in which they can go about doing their job. Track and report on common activities and performance. So you need to identify your goals and objectives and then measure your performance against those. Retaining company know-how. So that's important in terms of business continuity. If staff go on holidays or staff leave, that you've got the procedures relating to them, the work instructions relating to their particular job become the induction manuals for the person that's going to replace them. So it helps in that. So there's a business continuity element about this as well, is that you've got procedures and information in place that the new person that can come in can pick up the procedures and just run with it and continue the job without too much disruption. And assist with business growth. I think there's an element of that because it does present a marketing opportunity for you in terms of tenders, and I did a workshop on tenders this morning, that a lot of government agencies are now in their tender documents are asking questions of your quality management approach, your environmental management, your work health and safety. I mean, local government tenders, particularly facilities management and construction type tenders, are asking questions on your safety performance, and do you have a safety policy and a procedure manual? So, if you've got these things in place, then it's going to, help you with tenders, but also it gives comfort to your suppliers and to your clients that you're operating with a standard, operating within internationally best practice standards as well. So, and likewise with environment, again, there's that corporate social responsibility. So you're going to be able to market your business in a positive light from that point of view. So how big should these systems be? When I talk about policies and procedures, I'm not suggesting voluminous documents of text on how to do this. Depending on the size of your business, it could be some simple flow charts, or it could be a one-pager with some dot points guiding your staff down a certain path to do things. It really depends on what we call the organisational context, or the operating environment in which your business operates. So internal environment and external, so the size, location, culture, legal environment, and the like. We'll touch on that a bit more. The scope of the system or the level of application. So, if you've got multiple offices, are you going to operate? Are you going to? This comes from an auditing perspective. Are you going to have it apply across the whole company, or have it apply across a particular project, or apply it just to a particular office? So you need to outline the scope of it. So the scope is in terms of location, level of application, but also what functions within your business is it applicable to. So the nature of your business, your industry type, what industry you operate in, and obviously the rigors of a workplace health and safety system are going to be a lot greater for a mining and construction company as opposed to a consulting business like mine. So that also has an impact on the size and complexity of your system, and then also the legislation and the legal environment that you have to work within as well. And it's based on, in terms of the management of these systems and the setting up of the systems. The first thing is to plan it. So determine and assess hazards, risks and opportunities, and develop your documentation around that, your risk registers and the like. Then you need to develop and implement the processes. So, what are the procedures that you're going to put in place to identify hazards in the first place, to manage risks, and identify opportunities. The processes of the products that you provide. How do you determine customer satisfaction? Through surveys, feedback, testimonials, those types of things. So you need to monitor and measure activities and processes. So constant management review, setting in place your objectives and then monitoring your performance against those objectives. And the like. So, and again, customer feedback is a way to monitor and measure it. So put in place those measures to do that. And then you've got to act on it. So continuous improvement to achieve the planned outcomes. So it's no point having all these policies and procedures and work instructions and the like if you're not going to follow them. Because as an auditor, if I'm coming out to audit your management system to give you certification or ensure certification, then I'm going to be looking for two things. One, do you have the documentation, policies, procedures, work instructions that the standard says that you need? And two, are you actually following those? So that's the thing. You might have all the documentation that ticks off the standards, but you may not be following them and providing evidence of such. So that's where you're going to get marked down on that. And likewise, if you do have a work health and safety incident, the safety, the inspectors that come in to monitor your, that are going to investigate that if it's a notifiable incident, then they're going to be, again, looking for two things. One, do you have the procedures and policies in place? And two, were they implemented in the manner in which they should have been? And it's all these things. So that's the risk side of it as well. It's giving guidance as to how people to act in your workplace, but it's also protecting your business from anything untoward. So here is the sort of the diagram that explains that plan, do, check, act, cycle. So each standard is a document which outlines the requirements of a management system. You can purchase these. You do need to buy a license to purchase them through Standards Australia, and I've got the website for you later on. You can get them certified. I mean, there is a cost to that, where you get a third-party certifying body to come in and certify your management system. And SAI Global is a company that I have some dealings with. They and PricewaterhouseCoopers are another certifying body. They will come in and assess your systems and your implementation, and then they'll give you a certificate to say you're certified to these standards. But the documents, the standards, you need to purchase as well. They have, for all three standards, they have this similar table of contents, which we'll go through, except in the safety one, leadership, they've added in the words "and worker participation." I'm encouraging worker participation in the development and implementation of all the standards, but it's particularly important in relation to work health and safety. So let's go through the requirements. The first part is to determine the organisational context. So that's the getting an understanding of the environment in which you operate. So the internal and external environment, which I've got a couple of slides that we'll run through. You also need to understand the needs and expectations of workers and interested parties. So interested parties are your stakeholders, your banks, customers, insurance companies, suppliers, any other organisation outside your business that you deal with. Determine the scope of the system, which we talked about, and then implement, maintain, and continually improve your system. So you can see there the interested parties, consumers, customers, employees, owners, shareholders, suppliers, and other business partners. So, and then we look at the internal and external environment. So looking at the external issues, you need to be across the political environment, economic, social, technological, environmental, and legal environment in which you operate. The financial impact on the market, introduction of new competitors, knowledge of products, impact on HSEQ, key business and market drivers, external relationships, and any changes. So I guess if you've developed a business plan or a strategic plan, you'll go through and look at these sort of things. What are the external issues that are going to impact on your ability to develop and deliver your products and services and grow your business? And then we look at the internal issues, so your governance, risk and compliance framework, policies, procedures, resources, knowledge and competence, knowledge and competence of your management and your staff, information management, introduction of new products, relationship with workers, work time and conditions. So that's basically the industrial arrangement, industrial framework that you have in place, and any changes to those. So sitting down and looking at your business and saying, well, what are the things outside my business that are going to impact on me? And what are the things inside my business are going to impact me? Because that's when you then start and use that to develop your risk registers, identify your hazards, identify opportunities, and then start and develop some procedures and documentation around that. So the other thing is leadership, and in the case of safety, worker participation, but the standards talk about top management. That's basically the senior management of the organisation. They need to demonstrate leadership and commitment. So if you're going to develop all these policies and procedures, well, top management need to operate in accordance with them as well and do the things that the standards require. So develop and implement your HSEQ policies and procedures, and I'll go through what ones you require. Management needs to determine roles and responsibilities and authorities, and assign authorities and communicate them. So perhaps when you're hiring employees or consultants or contractors, develop some job descriptions that clearly outline the roles and responsibilities, and also responsibilities in relation to HSEQ. And have in place processes to consult with and encourage participation of workers. So with your staff, you've got to consult them on HSEQ issues. You've got to communicate with them, and you need to encourage them in the development and ongoing implementation and management of your HSEQ procedures and framework. So you need to do the first thing, once you've sort of developed your context, understood your context and the like, then you can start and work on some policies and procedures. So HSEQ policies, there's 3 policy documents that you need. These are generally a 1-page statement of intent. That's what a policy is. This is where we want to go as a business. You need a work health and safety policy, an environment policy, and a quality policy. And these provide the framework for setting the HSEQ strategy and the business objectives. And also, it's got to be appropriate to the size and context of the organisation. So obviously, you can imagine the policies of big companies compared to the ones that we deal with through ASBAS under 19 employees. So, and the nature, scale, and impact of the activities, products, and services on the market. You've got to document them. So, you need to write out these policies. You need to, consult with relevant workers. You need to communicate them. They need to be understood by workers and interested parties, made available. So put them on your website, hang them on a notice board in the office, and you need to apply them. And from an auditing perspective, that's a question that I'm going to ask. Have you documented the policies? Have you communicated those? Are they understood? Have you made them available? And are you applying them? So how would I do that? Documented. Okay, I'll see an evidence of documented policy, on your website or notice board or whatever. Have you communicated that? Well, I might look at whether you've sent an email out to staff or whether you're in some minutes of management meetings. Are they understood? Well, I might look at your induction procedure to see whether you've shown a copy of the policy to your staff. Is it available? So can anyone access it, or can those who need to access it actually do so? So where have you made it available? Website, intranet, notice board and the like. And are you applying it? I'll do that through the records of implementation of your policies and procedures. So a policy, you need to include some particular statements in there. So in relation to work health and safety, in particular, you need to make a commitment to providing a safe and healthy work conditions. Likewise, eliminating workplace and environmental hazards, and a commitment to customer service in relation to quality. Across all these policies, you have to also have a statement committing to consulting and encouraging the participation of workers and their representatives, and also training and development. You need to have a commitment to fulfilling all your compliance obligations and any other requirements that you need to adhere to. You've got to have a commitment to reducing risks and realising opportunities, and a commitment to continuous improvement. So if I'm, as an auditor, if I'm looking at your policy statement, I want to see some statements over and above anything else you might want to put in there. But as a minimum, I want to see a reference to these 7 dot points. And that would be a compliant policy with the standard. But it's not just about meeting the standard, it's about having a policy that's relevant to your business and can guide you in your business management and growth. So the next part is part 6, which is the planning. So this is the strategic planning of your business and the leading to the development and implementation of your procedures. So your hazard identification and assessments. Look at the aspects of your business that can be controlled and influenced. Not everything that you do in your business can be controlled, but you have influence over it. And I guess an example is contractors that you bring on. You can control them through, an example is, staff you can control through, job descriptions, contracts of employment, and the like. So likewise with contractors, the contract of engagement, the procurement process, and the like. But a lot of things that are outside your control as well. A lot of things happen in the external environment. Interest rates, so you can't control that. But you can control, whether your financial management of that. So you need to identify those things that you can control and influence, and particularly in relation to environmental management. Not a lot of environmental things you can manage. You can't help if it rains, but you can manage how you're going to deal with that if it's going to have an impact on your ability to deliver your product or your service. And you need to determine your legal and other compliance obligations as part of that, because that will inform any risks that you might have and how you're going to manage that to make sure that you actually do comply with those legal things. So you need to set objectives. So be consistent with the HSEQ policies. Include a combination of quantitative and qualitative, or lead and lag indicators. So safety indicators, say lost time injury, and the like. Also, number of safety meetings that you might have throughout the year, set of objectives around that. They've got to be applicable to the organisation, obviously, and the environment and the context in which it operates. You must monitor them, communicate, and update them as required. And the SMART approach: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time frame. You don't want to set yourself up for failure. So make sure that they are achievable. But at the same time, give yourself a challenge. So you need to build in capacity to respond to emergencies. So you're going to need an emergency response plan. So, for example, if you're based in the northwest or in a cyclone area, you should have procedures around responding to cyclones. Other emergencies could be flooding, weather effects, dealing with difficult customers or violence in the workplace, those types of things. So identify what emergencies are likely to happen within your business and develop responses to those. Integrate your HSEQ into other business processes, so it does become part of the general way you operate. your business, and there's other standards and other processes that you're going to put in place around general business risks, asset management and maintenance, and the like. So your HSEQ, becomes an overriding approach to a lot of these processes as well. Communicate and encourage participation of workers. You need to train your staff in how to implement these as well. Plan for changes in operations, market and technology. You can also add to that learning and education as well. And develop evaluation and control measures. So you need to be able to review how you're going about it, and then making changes to that. So I've talked about policies and procedures and work instructions. The standards specify which type of document, which type of policies and procedures that you're going to have. And as a minimum, but you develop procedures that are relevant also to your business. So a policy is a high-level statement of intent. A procedure is a sort of, again, a higher level operating manual as to how you're going to run your business and the expectations. And then underneath that, since work instructions, which relate to a particular task or a safe work method statement that relate to a particular aspect of business operations as well. So you've got that sort of hierarchy. And then what I do, because I help businesses write these policies and procedures, is then develop a series of forms and templates to help with implementation and also record keeping. Because the way that the auditor determines whether you're fulfilling the requirements of the standard is firstly, obviously, do you have the right documentation? But secondly, are you implementing them? And the way they look at that is a combination of observation, so observing the workplace, interviews with staff and other management and key personnel, but also your records as well, record keeping. So record, if there's an incident, get staff to fill out an incident report form, these sort of things, and that shows what the incident was and what the solution was. So by reading that documentation, the auditor is going to be able to say, well, you're implementing the system, and here's the record and evidence of that. So the types of documents, the policies, the quality, environment, and safety, which we talked about, you need procedure manuals around safety and the like, safe work procedures, procedures around record keeping and document control, procurement and contract management. So record keeping and document control, how you collect, how you collect information, why you collect it, how you store it, how you use it, how you make it available to third parties, or the whole issue of privacy as well, and how you dispose of it, because you should be disposing of documentation when you're legally entitled to. Financial records you've got to keep for 7 years. So at the end of the 7 years, dispose of it. Certain records you might want to keep forever because they form part of the history of your business. Other records you can dispose immediately after use. Others you might want to keep for a certain period of time after the end of the contract. But you need to document all that in your procedure. And document control is things like version control and the like, which we'll talk about a bit later. Procurement and contract management, so how you go about procuring goods and services and managing contracts with third parties. And you need to reference HSEQ in those contracts. So, the same standards that you have for safety and health in your workplace, you may want to ask those same questions of your suppliers, because under work health and safety, there's a joint responsibility for contractors in terms of the management of work health and safety. So you don't want to engage suppliers that have an attitude to work health and safety that's inconsistent with yours. So you can use a lot of these the standards that you put in place be the standards that you expect of your suppliers. So emergency preparedness and response manual, which we've talked about. You need to have procedures around internal audit. So even though you may get an external auditor to come in and audit your system to ensure consistency with the standards and compliance with that, you should have an internal audit approach. So there's that constant monitoring and review of your implementation of the standards. So if there are any problems, you can sort them out before the auditor comes or before an incident happens or anything like that. So a lot of this is about, reactive management to incidences, but also preventative action to make sure that they don't happen in the first place. And preventative action, that non-conformity and corrective action is, and anything that where there's an incident happens that's inconsistent with your procedures, we refer to it as a non-conformity. You need to correct it and then make sure that it doesn't happen again. You also need to have procedures around continuous improvement, calibration of equipment, where you have equipment that requires calibration, so measuring devices, for example, timing devices. And you need to have a procedure in place for management review of the operations. So, your monthly senior management meeting, you talk about safety and health and environment and how you're proceeding against your objectives. Look at any incidences, get some trends in incidences, and put in place measures to rectify problems or prevent them from happening, or continually improving your operations. So once you've set up your management system, you then need to determine, management needs to determine the resources required to implement it and provide those resources. So it could be plant and equipment, it could be additional personnel or restructuring of your personnel. It could be providing for a HSEQ manager to come in and manage the day-to-day oversight of it. They're things that you need to do. You need to look at the required level of worker competency. So what sort of skills and experience your staff should have to be able to work for your organisation, and then provide training to bring them up to the required standard, and ongoing induction process for new workers and the like. Need to make sure your workers are made aware of the HSEQ. So obviously new staff, the induction process would be the means to do that. And then for existing staff, obviously they're going to be participating in the establishment of it and have a sense of ownership. But over time, regular newsletters, email newsletters, toolbox meetings, those sort of things are where you reinforce the HSEQ and communicate it internally and externally. So, as I said, you might want to put your policies on the website, communicate, if you've got newsletters to your suppliers and your clients, talk about it in that. So communication, participation, consultation are key elements of development of implementation and development and implementation of your management systems. So maintain documented information, so policies, procedures, work instructions, templates and forms, and you need to have evidence of implementation, which I talked about, and having the templates and forms can assist in that, and a good record keeping system as well. Document control in terms of identification, formatting, review and approval mechanisms to make sure that the correct documentation is being used. If you're working in areas where you need plans and diagrams, architectural drawings, very important to make sure that you're using the latest version and there's appropriate sign off on that. Distribution, access, retrieval and use. So we talked about that. Storage, preservation, information security is an important element. So protecting yourself from cyber security. There's a whole new standard on that, ISO 27001, which I can run webinars and that on. Control changes, so your version control, and then also your retention and disposal. So I touched on those things earlier, but they're the sort of things that you would address in your record keeping and document control procedure. So in terms of the operations, so you've looked at your internal context, you've developed a business or a strategic plan, you've got a good handle on how you operate your business, you've identified your risks and hazards, and that's what this is. And now then, you've developed your policies and procedures and your work instructions, you've got all your forms and templates. Now we just got to get on and run your business. And that's what I'm saying. More often than not, when you look at the stuff that I've gone through, I think you would probably have all this in place in some form, may not documented, but you would pretty much do a lot of this stuff. So it's a case of, when I go into businesses and help them set up these systems, I'll look at what they're doing now. I'll compare that to the standard, and then I'll just plug the gaps. So if they're doing something already that's consistent with the standard, I'm not going to create a whole new procedure. I'm just going to simply document what they're doing because they're already complying with the standard. So why create something new if they're already operating in accordance with that best practice requirement? So, you need to plan, implement, control, and maintain the processes needed to meet the requirements, your policy, your objectives and targets, and your legal requirements and all that. Eliminate your hazards, reduce risks and realise opportunities. Control procurement of goods and services to ensure HSEQ conformity. So, if you're purchasing safety boots, you need to make sure that those boots are compliant with Australian standards for safety boots or helmets or environmental management. That you perhaps are purchasing, if you're purchasing chemicals, that they're environmentally friendly. How you store those chemicals, well, there's obviously dangerous goods legislation that specify that, but you need to have, bunding around it. They might be needed to be secured in a lockable cabinet. Also, you might need to have a spill kit to clean up anything and make sure that, any oils or anything don't leak into drains. So, bunding protection around drains and the like. So they're the things that, in terms of procurement of goods and services, you need to be mindful of as well. And again, it's a marketing thing. If you're using environmentally friendly chemicals, well, that's something that you market. So ensure contractors and their workers conform to HSEQMS as well. So, you need to, and this relates also to work health and safety, is this joint responsibility that if you've got your staff and contractors from another company in your business, then you've got obviously a responsibility to your workers around work health and safety, and they've got a responsibility to you. But you need to consult and communicate with the owner of that other company to make sure that your requirements around work health and safety are known to their staff and their management, and that they are implementing those as well. So there is that joint responsibility under work health and safety, and likewise across the whole HSEQ, you want to make sure that anyone that you're engaging is operating in accordance with your standards. And the procurement function allows you to source that and make sure, and the contracts that you sign, should have reference to your HSEQ management system and the requirements of that. So that's where you control your outsourced functions as well. So don't engage anyone that's not going to be prepared to follow your policies and procedures. And then you also need to respond to potential emergency situations. So, you need to identify those and then, respond to them in accordance with procedures. And, I look at that whole, providing first aid and response to it. You might need to bring in ambulance and police and fire and other emergency services to help as well. So your procedures will document all that. But also the other thing that I put in these procedures is after the event. So looking at the emotional situation of staff if they're confronted and having to deal with an emergency. So making sure proper counselling and dealing with the sort of mental health aspect of that as well. And that's an important element of work health and safety too, which I'll talk about. And, you know, you're not slave to procedures. The procedures need to grow and evolve with your business. And, you know, part of the management review is to identify, are those procedures still relevant to how we're doing business? And, you know, make changes to them. So, you know, make temporary and permanent changes to the HSEQ in response to changes in the workplace, compliance obligations, improve knowledge and information, developments in knowledge and technology. So, yeah, and that's that continuous improvement as well of your procedures that an auditor would look for. So, yeah, don't be slave to the procedures. Have your management review process should be making sure that your procedures are consistent with and helping you achieve your business objectives. That's what it's about, and protecting your business and making sure that they're relevant and up to date and, you know, current. Likewise with your policy, you know, you factor in to review these every couple of years, or in the case of an incident where you undertake an audit and investigation, you know, one of the recommendations might be that procedures need to change because the procedures didn't adequately protect you. So always have that management review of your procedures and policies. And that's what this is, performance evaluation. You know, you need to constantly monitor what you're doing, measure performance against your objectives, analyse why things have happened, evaluate the effectiveness of that, including, you know, the extent to which you've complied with your legal and other obligations. And to do that, you conduct internal audits at planned intervals and investigations and incident investigations after things happen. So you should have a plan to do an audit of either the whole system. Certainly need to do a full system audit before your annual annual certification audit and before a certification audit. But you should be having internal audits, either the whole system or parts of the system throughout the year. But then that's that's in addition to any incident investigations that you might need to take in relation to a particular incident, whether it be a safety and environmental quality incident that occurs. So, you know, if a customer's not happy with a service or product that they've been provided, you need to investigate why and identify if there's an issue at your end or if it's just them, and then what you're going to do about it. And then you have the documentation that you keep outlines the whole investigation process and then what the eventual outcome was. And then you use that information to make sure that those incidences don't happen again. And you should communicate the outcome of reviews to workers and other interested parties or relevant interested parties as well. So part of your training and your ongoing engagement with your staff, that they're made aware of issues as well. And you can do that through newsletters, email, toolbox meetings, the like. So continuous improvement. So you develop your policies and procedures, you consult with all parties, provide training and information, hazard identification and assessment, risk control strategies, and promote, maintain, and continually improve the system. So that's essentially from development to implementation and continuous improvement. So, look to enhance the performance of the system, promote the culture, promote worker participation, communication results, and maintain documented evidence of improvement as well. So we're always should be looking to do things, improve upon what we've done before. And this also leads to incident investigations, looking at non-conformities. So when a non-conformity occurs, react to it, evaluate why it happened, review existing OHS risks and other risks, determine and implement corrective action, review the effectiveness of that action undertaken, and make any changes to the safety system or the broader HSEQ system if required. And you need to document, all these stages and what the eventual result was. So that's the HSEQ management system. Part of that is health. So looking at healthy workplaces, because we talk about work health and safety, we tend to focus more on the safety component, which is the practical side of it. You can clearly, safety boots and, barriers and, that sort of physical side of it, personal protective equipment and the like. But we need to be mindful of a healthy workplace as well. So identify situations where worker health could be impacted. And again, it could be specified by legislation compliance. So if you're working in a business that has a lot of chemicals, well, you might want to have regular biological testing, loud noise hearing tests, provide end of trip facilities or operate in an office complex that provides for those, for people that, staff that want to walk or run or cycle to work, so that they've got, those sort of facilities, health messages on notice boards and email alerts. And importantly, and it's always been around in the workplace, but it's becoming an important element of within the work health and safety legislation, is managing psychological health. And I'll touch on that a little bit. So exposure to abuse and violence, and particular focus now on gendered violence and aggression as well. So you need to have some procedures and management of that as well. I've recently done a mental health accreditation course to allow me to be a mental health first aid officer. And that was quite covered off on all these areas of psychological health. And, the definitions, and it's come out of the training that I did, the World Health Organization, we look at it in a positive or negative. So a state of mental health or good psychosocial health is a state of well-being in which an individual realises their own abilities, can cope with normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to their community. So if you're able to do all those things, then you're considered to have good mental health. Likewise, if you can't, well, then you're considered to have, a mental health situation. So affects a person's thinking, emotional state, and behaviour, and disrupts a person's ability to work or carry out other daily activities and engage in satisfying personal relationships. So that's what, your mental health policies and procedures and your management of that needs to ensure that your workers have that. And a lot of things happen outside the workforce that you don't have control over that are impacting on your workforce. And that's all, one of the issues with FIFO workers and mental health and suicide and that. And is that a FIFO issue or is it a social issue? And question of how much influence outside of the workforce does that have on FIFO workers? So, and I guess get down to what I was talking about earlier about control and influence. What are the things that you can control, but what are the things that you can influence as well? So, messages, we talk, healthy messages within the workplace, are you okay day? And, reinforcing positive, health, psychosocial messages in the workplace. That they're things that you can do that might influence a person's mental state in a positive way. And then a problem is a broader term including mental illness and symptoms of mental illness that may not be severe enough to warrant the diagnosis of a mental health. So people might just be on the border. So do take particular attention to that. And the types of psychosocial health, depression, anxiety, psychosis, substance abuse, gambling, and eating disorders lead to poor psychosocial health. So the recommendation is then to develop policies and procedures to manage psychosocial health in the workplace. You might want to consider, training and appointing a person as a mental health first aider. And there's a website that will give you more information. And accredited first aiders have skills to approach a person, assess and assist with any crisis. So it's the ALGI approach. Approach the person first, listen and communicate, give support and information, encourage the person to get appropriate help, and encourage other support. So they're not meant to be the workplace psychologist. You may have other services that you provide to your staff in that that situation, but it's a person in the workplace that can just go up, if someone's experiencing, how you going, you're all right, are you aware that there's some help that you can get, and here's some information that you can do. So it's about communication and providing support and information. It's not being the psychologist. Have a look at that website there. They'll give you some more info. As I said, I'll send you a copy of this document. Now, legislation, I'll just quickly touch on in Queensland and Northern Territory. That's where you can go and find some information on work health and safety legislation. So the legislation for all states, and WA just come under the model work health and safety laws now, which I'll touch on, but it set out requirements and standards for building healthy and safe workplaces, outlines what you as the business owner must do to protect health and safety and welfare of workers and other people in the workplace as well. So that's important. So puts legal obligations on the business owner, managers and workers. So, safety and health is the responsibility of everyone. And it combines the Act, regulation codes and guidance notes. So have a look at those for Queensland, Northern Territory if you're there. In WA, the new Act came into effect on the 31st of March. There's a number of regulations, some specific to mining industry, others the general regulations. It's based on the model work health and safety that's been adopted throughout the country in previous times by other state governments. But the notable differences is in relation to industrial manslaughter in WA. So they have placed the owner, your boss or you as a business owner could go to jail if you're found guilty of industrial manslaughter. Union rights of entry are retained in the Industrial Relations Act, as opposed to the Work Health and Safety Act, which is the case in other states. You can't use your insurance money to pay for, you can't use your insurance to pay for penalties. So it may very well come out of your pocket. And health and safety representatives can choose what course they want to take for their training, not the training provider that you recommend. I think that's done to allow people to go to the unions for training. There's also a specific duty included for providers of work health and safety services to ensure those services do not pose a risk. So that's people like me that provide work health and safety services. I need to make sure the advice, guidance and the documentation that I prepare is consistent with the Act. They've also introduced this term, person conducting a business or undertaking. So that's you as the owner of the business, or a manager or an officer. A person has been introduced as a primary duty of careholder and covers a broader range of workplace relationships. And that's the key, broader place of workplace relationships. So, and they've also, as part of that broaden the definition of a worker because the nature of work has changed. So the PCBU is the manager or the owner of the business. A worker is a person working for that PCBU, including work as an employee, so standard employee contract, a contractor, a subcontractor, a self-employed person, an out-worker, apprentice or trainee, work experience student, employee of a labour hire company, placed with a host employer, and volunteers. So it does have quite a broad definition. And even if you've just got, your son or your daughter helping you out, then you're still, you're covered, and you've still got to have a work health and safety protection for them. Labour hire. So, in my case, for example, I work for some government agencies through a recruitment firm. So I've got to, they've got to make sure that I'm working to the standard of that government agency. Because if I'm not, I'm breaching that recruitment firm's health and safety policies. But likewise, and that's that dual responsibility, is both the recruitment firm has a responsibility for my health and safety, but so does the agency that I'm working for. But I have a responsibility to both parties to comply with all lawful directions around work health and safety. So both the recruitment firm and the agency need to communicate with each other as to my health and safety within the workplace. And that's also determined by things like the contract that I sign. It'll have a statement, compliance with the agency's work health and safety policies, or environmental management policies, or quality policies and procedures as well. So I'm just dealing specifically with work health and safety. And that website there will take you to everything you need to know about work health and safety in WA. And the government did put out a lot of, or the department did put out a lot of guides and resources and tools to help with implementation. So environmental management, so that's, as I mentioned, your interaction with the natural environment and preventing or mitigating adverse environmental impacts. Need to mitigate the adverse effect of environmental conditions on the organisation. So I said, if you're in a cyclone zone, well, how do you manage, when you can't stop a cyclone, but how do you manage the impact of that on your day-to-day operations? If you're hit with a cyclone, how do you manage, health and safety of the workplace and workers? How do you manage the impact of the natural environment within your business? And how does it impact your ability to deliver a quality product or service to your customers and clients? So meeting your environmental obligations, and there's various environmental laws, enhance environmental performance. So, being a good corporate citizen in relation to environmental management, controls or influence the way products, services and activities are designed. So you need to design what you're doing in an environmentally responsible way. So if you're producing packaging, for example, are you using, if your products come in a particular package, how are you managing that? Are you using environment, recycled paper or cardboard and the like? So looking at what you do, how can you minimise the impact on the environment? Strengthens your market position, as I said, it's being seen as a good corporate citizen. And then, assists in implementing environment, social and governance. So the ESG standards, which are now becoming, particularly for larger entities, publicly listed companies, and that there's now this expectations that they'll report on not only on their environment, their financial performance, but their environmental performance, their social and their governance as well. So, ESG, management processes to establish to manage the business impact on social and environmental factors, conduct due diligence around the integrity of the investments. So, from an environmental point of view, it's looking at climate policies, energy, waste, pollution, natural resource conservation and treatment of animals. Social, it's looking at business relationships with internal and external stakeholders, so community, governments, their attitude to workers and their representatives, and the like. And then governance is accurate and transparent accounting methods, pursues integrity and diversity in selecting its leadership, and is accountable to shareholders. So, these are the things that over and above financial performance, because obviously you as a business owner or any business is there to maximise the return to shareholders, and could just be you being the one shareholder in your business. You need to maximise your return on your investment from a financial point of view, but there's now also an expectation that businesses consider the environmental factors, social and societal issues, and governance as well. And developing and implementing an HSEQ management system will assist you to do these things. And then combined with things like risk management, governance manuals, business continuity, and the like, all these things will tie in to you having a good ESG record. So that diagram there sort of shows you the things that are considered as part of that. And then quality management is delivering your products and services to your customers. What are things that we look at? These are the principles of quality management: engagement of people, so getting your workers involved, which we talked about, focus on customers and their needs; leadership, so commitment from top management; process approach, so developing your policies and procedures. So your methodology, what's the process you go through from the initial design of products and services to the release of that to the market; continuous improvement; evidence and fact-based decision making. So any decisions that you make need to be based on evidence and facts, not gut feeling. And then mutually beneficial relationships with suppliers. So you're having that good relationship with suppliers. You're only engaging suppliers that and third-party contractors that are prepared to meet your standards around HSEQ, and that you communicate, consult, liaise with them on work health and safety and your HSEQ in business generally. So that's what quality management is about. So that's my presentation today. Just in summary then, a successful HSEQ management system will have top management commitment. So, commitment from a doing point of view, commitment from providing resources and support. It'll also have a commitment from all levels and functions of the organisation. So, your workers and contractors and suppliers and customers will be across your HSEQ and be supportive of it. You'll have adequate communication and consultation with workers and encourage their participation in the development and implementation of it and the like. Effective processes in place to identify and manage hazards, risks and opportunities. Sufficient resources are allocated to the implementation. Full integration into other business processes, continuous monitoring and measurement of performance, continuous improvement, documented evidence of implementation. So if you've got all those things, then you're going to have a fully compliant HSEQ management system that achieves enhanced customer service, a healthy and safe workplace, improved management of environmental impacts, fulfillment of compliance obligations, positive public recognition, and business growth, because you're going to be able to market your business as having all these things. And then when it comes to answering those questions on tenders or even a grant application, you're going to be able to say you've got a fully compliant HSEQ management system with those international standards. You don't have to get it certified. There is costs involved in that upfront and annual, but you do. You should at the very least develop your management approach consistent with those standards, and you'll be able to market those as well. In relation to work health and safety in WA, WorkSafe do offer some certificates of achievement, which are free of charge. You do have to engage an auditor to come into audit, but the certificates are free of charge. That, at various levels of how you've been able to implement and manage work health and safety. So that's my. So this website has some stuff on Standards Australia where you can get your standards from. United Nations Sustainable Development Goals are sort of related to ESGS. And then if you want environmental management advice, WA, Queensland, Northern Territory, those websites. That's my contact details. And thank you for attending. I'll just open up the mic if you'd like to ask any questions. I know we've gone over time, but I'll hang around to 12:15. Well, if you've got any questions, and go from there. Otherwise, thank you for attending. Do take advantage of other business station services and advisory sessions and workshops and webinars. And yeah, please contact me if you want to follow up advisory session to discuss your particular needs. And I'll send you a copy of this presentation later on today, and you'll also have access to the recording next week. And as I said, if you want to ask a question, feel free to do so. Marty, sorry, I'm going to have to answer this live. You do need to have procedures around work health and safety, including a list of your compliance obligations, which you can put into your risk register. You do need to have the environmental management stuff. Yeah, you do need to have procedures around these matters. Likewise with quality and safety, and that's what I basically talked about in the presentation. Was how to go about developing the documentation that you would need, and also the type of documentation that you would have to have as well. So the big ticket item for environment is having a risk register, identifying all your environmental impacts and aspects. So what you do that impacts the environment, and then how you're going to manage and control that. Likewise with safety risks and quality risks as well. So if you were to develop your policies and procedures on each of those standards, then you would be able to cover off on those environmental quality and safety issues that I raised, and it'll also help you with the ESG component as well. So I hope that answers your question. All right, we'll leave it there. It's 12:15. Thank you for attending. And as I said, I'll email this. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, no, they're not additional things. I've just brought those out because you can develop just a quality management system. I've talked about it in the context of an integrated system, but you can just develop a quality management system and have that certified. You can just develop a safety and you can just develop an environmental one. But generally, businesses try and integrate all three. Now that they've standardised the approach across, and it makes it easier. But I've just brought those out to highlight the particular aspects of work health and safety, like particularly in WA now that we've got new legislation. So that's where we're at. So yeah, thanks for participating, and I'll send this document to you shortly. As I said, if you wanted to have follow-up discussion to talk about your particular business needs, happy to do that as well.